Live in Western Oregon, this is NBC 16 Today.
Good morning and welcome on into NBC 16 Today. Lily, you in the last half hour, you got my rant about how Tuesdays are the worst day of the week. So yeah. I'll lead with Happy Tuesday.
Good. See, I said we were going to work on him last half hour. He's come around already.
I'm faking it till I'm making it right now. Tuesdays, no, it's the worst day. You threw your Monday. You got the weekend's already far away, but also the next weekend's so far away. It was 90 degrees yesterday. Maybe I'm just grumpy.
I think you're grumpy. I think you just need to look at outside.
Outside looks decent. I'm almost through my coffee. Maybe things are starting to look in the right direction.
We'll check in at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. We'll start to build some positivity. Plus, with every half hour, we're a half hour closer to the weekend, albeit so far away. Let's take a look at what we'll be dealing with until we get there. Right now, we're seeing temperatures similar to what we saw yesterday in these early morning hours. Along the I-5 corridor, we're talking mid to upper 50s. The coast, though, getting a little envy from me because we're still sitting in the mid to upper 40s out there in the central coast. South coast a touch warmer than that, and then the the bacon when it comes to staying warm in the early morning hours. We're talking mid to upper 60s, and we'll call it mid to low 60s along that portion of the I-5 corridor. Still much, much warmer than what we're seeing in other spaces across the region. This is what we're really focusing on, though, here. Southern portion of our region into the Cascades, we're starting to see some activity. Usually it's been left east of the Cascades. Now it's kind of creeping back towards us. Not going to make major impacts, but impacts it will make. We're talking a little bit of moisture, but that's also going to bring us to a little bit of a cool down towards the middle of our week. Our Wednesday and Thursday, probably seeing some cloud coverage and temperatures that won't quite climb as high as we've been seeing because that low pressure system will leave some light impacts, bringing some cloud coverage to our region. The wind's going to calm down a little bit. The I-5 corridor seeing gusts up in the mid-teens throughout the next 24 hours, but let's focus on exactly what we'll see. We're going to see clear skies today, temperatures climbing up towards the low 90s, probably not quite cracking that on average across the region. And then you see at the 12 a.m., 4 a.m. tomorrow, those clouds starting to creep in. That's the first sign of a cooling trend coming our way, albeit not that strong of one.
The death toll continues to rise in Texas following the flooding over the holiday weekend. Officials say at least 104 people are dead following floods in central Texas. Search and rescue teams have recovered 84 bodies, including 28 children in Kerr County. Authorities are expecting the death toll to rise with additional rainfall on the way and more threats of flooding in already saturated places. At least 19 deaths were reported in 5 other counties.
And now we're joined here on NBC 16 Today by Chief Meteorologist John Mayer to kind of break down the forecasting that went into these Texas floods and exactly how it looks to do similar things here. First of all, John, how are you this morning?
Good. Thanks for having me, of course. And I mean, I think this has become a major talking point over the past week or so. Of course, we're no strangers to flooding here in Oregon, but this was flash flooding. Big difference there when it comes to the two. The difference here is when we think about flooding, what we're essentially talking about is river levels that start to rise over a longer duration event. Flash flooding, though, it's the word flash. That's what really goes into it. The idea of having significant rainfall in a very short period of time and seeing how big the rise, the crest in those rivers can be, really fueled by 3 elements. Heavy rainfall, which we had plenty of, non-porous terrain, very rocky terrain that they get out in the hill country, but also elevation. It's called the hill country in Texas for a reason. It's not like our hills. We're not 1,300 feet, only maybe 500 to 600 feet, but combined with rocky terrain, the water can't penetrate the soil. It all runs off. And when all of that runs off, you see the water levels rise, and that's how you get that significant cresting. I mean, 20 plus feet in just a matter of hours, like we saw in the Guadalupe.
Now, people are kind of pointing fingers at this point. Was the forecasting done properly? Were the alerts given out in the right pattern? How difficult is that to sparse as far as who's to blame? And then beyond that, what does that forecasting process look like when you go to issue alerts of this nature?
Well, what is difficult there is you're talking about torrential downpours from thunderstorms that aren't necessarily widespread, rather isolated thunderstorm cells moving through. On top of that, you're seeing all of the runoff combining into one riverbed. And so you need to get not just where these thunderstorms are, how many they are, and how many of them run off into the exact same riverbed. And so that's where that forecasting really does become difficult. Ultimately, what we know, though, going into an event like this, we're in an area in the hill country in Texas that is flash flood prone. It's not an area that is a stranger to seeing water levels rising, high water rescues, things of that nature. I was a chief meteorologist in West Texas for 3 years before coming here. That's not the hill country, but it's not far off. And we saw those sort of torrential downpours that would lead to water rescues all the time. It's something that they're definitely used to in the area, but it's a matter of having those plans in advance. Go ahead.
Is there some level of alert fatigue when you live in a place like this, that maybe you're not responding the same way?
Yeah, there can be, but I think a good comparison is we're no strangers to wildfires here. And when we talk about wildfire danger, we're talking about preparations in advance. We say, have your go bag ready, have your defensible space ready, have all of that pre-prepared. Even on a day, if it's cooler, if it's a little wetter, if it's calm winds, we say it's a low fire danger. That doesn't mean zero. That doesn't mean go ahead and forget about everything. It means having those preparations ready to roll at a moment's notice. And in this case, it happened in the middle of the night. That makes it so much more difficult to get those alerts out, but everybody needs to be on top of things and know what the potential is.
And John, you talked about those key ingredients that make up an event like this. Now, how long does it take to realize, okay, these key ingredients are working in a way that is a potential danger? Now, you talked about that alert being in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Could that have been sooner?
That is difficult. It really is. I mean, ultimately, the alerts did come a couple of hours before we saw the water levels cresting. A lot of it does become kind of a wait and see exactly where those individual cells hit. In this case, they all lined up perfectly for all of that runoff in one riverbed. I think ultimately, a lot of times it does come to preparation, making sure that everyone knows what to do in the event that one of these alerts come down. And that's why we have all of those sort of secondary plans here for wildfires. Same idea when it comes to flash flooding in Texas. You need to have those plans in place and be ready at a moment's notice. If you know the threat is there, sometimes it's better to take a risk and say, what if this happens? Let's go ahead and take a step back. Let's take a step away from the river. Obviously, this was much worse than expected. Horrible tragedy. There's no two ways about it. But I do think this shows the importance of taking those sorts of risks seriously. Even if, I mean, we had about a month ago, we saw level 3 go now evacuation notices in Mapleton. We didn't see Mapleton burn down, but we saw the fire near those houses. Lane County Sheriff's Office put those evacuations in place for a good reason. Everybody ultimately, thankfully, didn't see the fire spread, but the risk was there. And so they went ahead and pulled the trigger on those warnings. And ultimately, that's the idea. Our goal is to keep everyone safe. It's not to decide whether or not people are getting tired of these warnings. We have to make sure the information is out there. And ultimately, that's why it's so important for people to take that seriously.
And as we move into the summer months, it's such an important lesson for us all to remember as we move forward into further into wildfire season. Chief Meteorologist John Mayer, thanks so much for stopping by and joining us.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, hopefully we find some good out of this story when it's all said and done. Learning lesson for folks. And of course, we're going to be following the aftermath of this moving forward.
Absolutely.
Most definitely. Thank you.
And ahead this morning on Today, live reports from the ground in Kerrville, Texas. They'll have the very latest on recovery efforts, survivor stories, and powerful tributes for the girls of Camp Mystic. That's all coming up right here on NBC 16 today, 7 o'clock on Today. President Trump turning his attention to international issues, having dinner with the Israeli Prime Minister to discuss bringing an end to 21 months of fighting in Gaza.
And as the two leaders talk about a possible ceasefire agreement, administration officials are working to avoid a multi-front trade war over tariffs. The White House pushing back a deadline, but threatening higher tariffs if no deal is done.
NBC's Alice Barr has the latest details from the nation's capital.
It's really nice to have you at the White House.
President Trump meeting late Monday with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, looking to leverage the ceasefire between Israel and Iran into a permanent peace.
I hope it's over. Yeah, I think Iran wants to meet. I think they want to make peace.
And a window to end the 21 months of devastating fighting in Gaza. The president projecting optimism.
I don't think there's a holdup. I think things are going along very well.
Despite Hamas wanting a full end to the war in exchange for the remaining hostages, while Israel still seeks to eliminate Hamas. As negotiations continue, the White House also pressing world leaders for deals on trade, sending letters Monday to 14 countries setting new higher tariff rates, including 25% duties on major trading partners, South Korea and Japan, up to 40% for Laos and Myanmar. The president describing the letters as a more or less final offer.
Look, we're always subject to negotiate something that's fair.
Higher rates for trading partners across the world paused for 90 days were set to resume tomorrow, but the new rates are now set to take effect August 1st, though the president acknowledged that could change again.
I would say firm, but not 100% firm.
Stocks dipped Monday after the tariff news, the Treasury Secretary looking to reassure.
My mailbox was full last night with a lot of new offers, a lot of new proposals.
Promising more deals are coming. Also, on the international front, President Trump said the U.S. would resume shipments of some weapons to Ukraine after the Pentagon ordered a pause earlier this month. The president reiterated his frustration with Russian President Vladimir Putin for keeping up attacks and said Ukraine has to be able to defend itself. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Continuing nationally, the stock market dropped yesterday in response to news that President Trump sent tariff letters out. The Dow Jones falling over 400 points, the Nasdaq down almost 200, the S&P 500 falling nearly 50 points. He had sent the letters to South Korea, Japan, Myanmar, Laos, Kazakhstan, and South Africa. We'll check on today's number when the stock market opens later this morning.